Okay, so أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to our last meeting of the year. We are continuing to study Surah Sajdah, and this will be our last session this year, and then we will resume in 3 weeks. In January, inshallah. January 18th. Oh no, sorry, January 8th. So without further delay, I will turn to Dr. Yamina to lead us in tonight's session. We're continuing to journey in Surah Sajdah, and this will be, inshallah, our sixth session. As usual, you're welcome to join in with your comments and questions, either during the discourse or at the end. Bismillah. Jazakumullah khair.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So last week, you probably remember we started Ayah 32:9. So today we'll consider Ayah 10 and 11. And in Ayah 10 and 11 we're told, and they say, what, after we've been lost in the earth, shall we indeed be in a new creation? Nay, they are disbelievers in the meeting with their Rabb, with their sustainer. وقالوا وإذا ضللنا في الأرض أئنا لفي خلق جديد بل هم بلقاء ربهم كافرون. And in Ayah 11 we're told, say, the angel of death who has been given charge of you will take you, and then unto your Rabb, unto your sustainer, you will be returned. قُلْ يَتَوَفَّاكُمْ مَلَكُ الْمَوْتِ الَّذِي وُكِّلَ بِكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَى رَبِّكُمْ تُرْجَعُونَ. So from Ayah 10, it seems that these people identify themselves with their physical being. They say, after we have been lost in the earth. And what's lost in the earth? When we die, what's lost in the earth? It's the body. So when they are saying after we have been lost in the earth, clearly they think that's who they are, and therefore, rather than our bodies are buried in the earth, they are saying we have been lost in the earth. And because of their self-perception, it makes sense that they believe that once their body is lost in the earth, then it's the end. That's how they perceive, because that's how they perceive themselves. And it also makes sense from their perspective that they cannot relate to God as their Rabb. They may not deny God, but the God they believe in is not the God described in the Quran, because the God that they believe in can't be the Rabb. They cannot relate to their Rabb, since they are not even connected to their own selves, to their own ruh. They're stuck at the level of the physical, their physical entity. And that's why the ayah 10 ends with بَلْ هُمْ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّهِمْ كَافِرُونَ. They are disbelievers in the meeting with their Rabb, with their sustainer. In the next ayah also, it starts with saying, say the angel of death who is in charge of you will take you. So we're not told you will die, as we are told in some other places in the Quran. Here it is the angel of death is specified. The angel of death will take you. And what does the angel of death take back? I mean, the body, the matter, the physical substance, which is the body, is buried in the earth, as they themselves mention. So what is the angel taking back then? something that doesn't belong to the material world, something immaterial. It is something related to the ruh. And this is a reminder for us that the you here, Allah is saying you, so we understand it as we are not merely bodies. The body is like a vessel to the ruh. And this takes some work. We need to do some work to contemplate, as we are told again and again in the Quran, to reflect and contemplate in order to get familiarize ourselves with this reality, which is our reality. It means this work that we need to do and that we are asked to do in the Quran is a work of peeling off the false assumptions about who we are, about what life is about. And the more we reject and question and reject the false assumptions, the more we can confirm the reality that we are told about in the Quran, because we will observe, we will be able to see it then, we will be able to witness it, and therefore confirm the truth of the message. Generally, without realizing, we've been conditioned to build, to have a certain image of ourselves. And at whatever level it is, whatever the culture is, everyone is conditioned to build and promote, if we can say, a certain image of ourselves to others mostly. And because when we are not in touch with who we are truly, we can only see ourselves through how the others perceive us, which is not healthy. And so people often identify with their skills, their place of birth, their families, and other things. Those may be facts, but they are not who we truly are. Before being a doctor or a teacher, that's a skill, that's some knowledge, but there is something else who we are, which is beyond that, behind being a doctor or a teacher, or coming from this place or that place, being born here or there, being from this family or that. So whatever our image of ourselves is, we need to look beyond the veil of that image. And that image is an amalgam of lots of things, our memories, our ideals, our feelings, everything is mixed up and we make up an image. And there can be truth in it and there can be falsehood in it. We cannot be aware of what's going on until we start intentionally and consciously looking for who we truly are. And then once we find our true identity, then all our other identities, they will be like, yeah, they are like wearing different coats or different. So in order to find who we truly are, we need to ask questions and we need to contemplate. For instance, are we, right now we can ask ourselves, are we our bodies? It doesn't take long to realize that we are not, since you can look around you, even if we don't remember our own childhood, but most of us will remember, we were kids. Everyone was a baby, a toddler, a child, and then a young adult, and start growing and growing. And that body keeps changing. So we can't be that. We only live as though we are bodies when we don't question it. And when we question it once, it does not change how we perceive ourselves. It has to be it has to be last enough to change how we start perceiving ourselves and the world around us and other people as well. So it's not one day, it's not a matter of only intellectual information and understanding. The heart also has to process that information until it is digested and it becomes our experience of life, our reality. That's why there is reflection, there is tafakkur and tadabbur, and there is contemplating, which is in the Quran anyway. Even the reasoning is a skill of the heart when it is done properly. Once we realize that we are not our bodies, we can also ask, are we our transient, our ever-changing thoughts and feelings and assumptions that arise and fade like in our minds all the time? Clearly, we're not that. So when we start saying it's like La ilaha, we are not this, we are not that, who we are, we start getting closer to it. Because even when we say ruh, it only makes sense to the extent that person has an experience of it. When we talk about anything in life, when it is new, we have to compare it to something we know, something we experienced. If someone talks about a new fruit, we say, how is it? How does it look? How is it? How does it taste? So look, how does it look? We can say it's round, it's green, it's red. But when it comes to consistency and taste, we're going to compare it to something we know. We know means we experienced another fruit that we've already eaten before. And that's why here ruh is, no one can tell you what it is until you experience it yourself. And that's why this contemplation, where we strip away our identities, those identities that are related to our physical life, physical entities that are related to our personality, our skills, things that are subject to change, and what remains, that's who we are.
Dr. Yamina, I want to ask you a question, and I know this will reveal that I haven't done my meditation, but I still would like to ask it. So when we say that we are not our bodies, we're not. That's easy to understand because body changes, and especially as we're getting older, we know the body is not acting the way we are used to, but we still feel ourselves. So that is, I think, easier to understand to largest extent. I'm not my body, but when I think about personality and skills, the question is, if we, peel them out, then like, how are people different? Like when sometimes when
think of it this way. We can talk about our physical entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go and you can, even if you have not meditated or contemplated, you
Mm-hmm.
know that you can stop, be silent, and go inside and almost observe your thoughts, even if you don't know what each thought is, but you feel that there is some activity, some mental activity. There are some feelings going on, even if you don't actually, you're not able to perceive each emotion. So who is aware of what's going on? Who is observing and conscious of that personality, this and that? And there are traits that we like and traits that we say, oh, maybe I should change this, and things like that.
So that's the ruh.
If I can decide that I like this trait, let's alhamdulillah, and I don't like this, how can I change it? It means there is something else behind these things. And it means even personalities can change to some extent. The more the person is conscious, the easier it is to change. Or otherwise, if I think it's me, of course, I will never think of ever changing it. I say, this is me. Okay, finished. But the more we stay and listen and observe, we feel that there is something that is witnessing some activities in me. That witness, that conscious part, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, if that's the real us, and this is the question that I'm not sure if it's a good question, but when we get to the ruh, and if that's real us, then how are we also feel being different and unique. So how are we different? Because when I think about somebody, like I always think about, or I usually think about that person's personality. Like if I ask this question, if I ask for this favor, I know this person will immediately try to help. That's her style. This other person will be a bit more kind of complaining, or will be too busy. And business can change, but what I'm saying is, or even myself, I compare myself to others as a way. When I am told this, I get defensive, but this other person is open and willing to listen more. So these kind of personality differences, so they're not real.
Of course they are real.
Yes.
We have different faces, right? We all look different. Just because we said we are not, it doesn't mean that the body is not part of me. It's like a vessel for the ruh. It's still there. It's part of me. We have many identities, but the core of those identities, like the captain of the boat, who is the captain of the boat?
The ruh.
Who is the core higher self, or whatever you call it, that is going to influence everything else, who can, for instance, we all have, we are born with a certain look, we are born with a certain fitra. Some people, we all have different, some people are quieter, some people are more outspoken. Mm-hmm. The more outspoken, and it doesn't mean one is better than the other, it depends on how we use it. And someone who is fitratan, like innately quieter, can decide to be outspoken in a particular situation. And the person who is outspoken may feel the need to learn to be quiet in some situations. So we're not talking about that. This is something.
So the difference, thank you very much for this. So the difference between different people's ruh, could it be that it's more a slight difference, and it's more like in the last retreat we talked about different cravings and yearnings for different beautiful names of God, slightly different ones. Is that what makes my ruh slightly different from somebody else?
Or that is the need and the craving for the beautiful names. We all have them, but we may be more conscious of one than the other, or we may choose to cultivate a relationship with some names more than others, but potentially we have the potential to know all the names and to connect to all the names at the highest degree. And we know that Insan al-Kamil, who is modeled for us by the Prophet ﷺ, had fulfilled that potential. So it's not really that, it's more, how am I going to? it is related to consciousness. It is a consciousness of being unique, of being who you are. That, how do we get that that feeling itself, which is also a manifestation of the divine names, like the names unique, Ahad. Just like we have it on our face, we have it on, it's like an imprint in everything that is related to us. And even if you have twins or even triplets that are identically the same, they usually have, of course, different personalities and everything. But just because they look like each other, they don't feel like they are one is the other. They have a sense of I. That sense of I, we are given it. So the what is important is the more we go in, and we go in not by shedding light, and shedding light is becoming more aware of all our other suits, let's say, our other identities that are identities that we acquire, that are useful, but they are not exactly who we are deep down. The more we start realizing, realizing that inner core, which is always there, and it just like almost like suffocated, or the link or the connection is how do you say, the connection starts unveiling itself, and we start being more connected to that part of us that is conscious, that's the real I, not the I that is made of assumptions about what I like, what I need, what. Then we become more in touch with the more our needs, but intrinsic needs, not the need, I think I need some chocolate, not like that. And I made it on purpose that it's chocolate. It could be someone says, I need a house. Yes, we need a house, but like, even if you have not a house, but a small cabin or a hut or something, you still can live in it. I'm talking about more essential, more inherent needs, the need to exist, the need to be, the need to maybe the need to see, the need to hear, the need to comprehend, the need for joy, for meaning, for purpose, and the need for all these beautiful things to be, to have no end. Then we start getting in touch with those more inherent needs, and we start watching that conscious part of us starts becoming aware and totally at awe of how we have all these numerous needs, and somehow, unbeknown to us, we don't know how, they are miraculously taken care of. And so that core, because in the beginning it starts with almost like, I wouldn't say a self-discovery, it's more like a self-remembering, remembering who we are. And that remembering who we are leads us to remembering, or to discovering in the beginning, that there is some rububiya activity, even if we don't know the name, but we discover that our needs are being taken care of. I need to breathe, and lo and behold, I am made to breathe. I need to see, and I'm made to see. And if I were to stop seeing unless it's a known illness and we follow the rules, the laws of healing. Otherwise, no one can make me see. And sometimes the eye could be totally healthy, but if it doesn't see, it doesn't see, because it's not the eye, the flesh, the physical eye that sees. And so our new, if we carry on, remembering, self-remembering who we are, then we are led to a new path of remembering who is taking care of me, witnessing who is taking care of me so generously, so compassionately, in such an easy and a swift way that I take it for granted. I'm not even aware unless I pause and consciously watch. And when I watch, when I contemplate, I am amazed, and then I start living from that level of awareness. So whenever I remember my breathing, again, I am amazed at how I am made to breathe, and therefore I am witnessing, consciously witnessing, that someone is making me breathing. So that when the more we practice self-remembering this way, the more we will be led to remembering our Rabb. And that's the basics of dhikr, which is remembering God. And when we remember, we will mention Subhanallah. When we learn how to express it in a Quranic expression. So Subhanallah becomes the expression of that awe, of that gratitude, of that acknowledging the miracle of breathing, of seeing, of hearing, of standing, of walking, of moving, of doing things. We just want to do something and it is done unto us. And I want to do something and it's done unto me. I start being aware of how the ruh functions and how it rules the body, how consciousness, when I want something, I just want it, and the whole body answers. I don't have to think, oh, I need to move my hand first and this. They are all connected as one. And the more I watch this consciously, the more I am ready to witness how the creation, how the khalq is actually subject to the divine command. Everything all around the world is used is interconnected, is used, they all work with each other harmoniously. And the more I'm aware of how it happens in my body, my ruh-body connection, the more I start becoming aware that the act of creation, the process of creating the khalq, is actually the result of divine command, of amr. And that dhikr, that remembering of our Rabb, is very important. We did mention it in the past many, many times, so I'll just quickly remind ourselves and remember in Surah Al-Ra'd, which we did study together, and it was Surah 13, chapter 13. And in Ayah 28, we were told, those who believe and whose heart find their rest in the remembrance of God, for truly in the remembrance of God, hearts find their rest. So we saw الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنَّ قُلُوبُهُم. So those who When you believe, your heart finds rest in the remembrance of God. And then we are told you can only find rest only in the human heart, can find rest only in the remembrance of God. So it's very important because everyone is working very hard to find joy and rest and peace, and people are been working to get wealth, to get possessions, to get self-fulfillment in a career, in knowledge, in this and that. And now people added on top of it meditation, yoga, and this and that. And all of them are looking for this rest and this peace and this itmi'nan and this satisfaction and fulfillment. And we are told here that fulfillment you can only find it in remembering God, because even if you think you found it in anywhere else, deep down in us, the core of us will not find peace. Why? Because any other fulfillment, deep down we know that it is ephemeral, it is temporary. The temporary, we don't like it. We want whatever is good, we want it to last. And the only way to make anything last is through connecting it to its eternal source, to God, to our Rabb, to the Rabb of everything. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33, Ayah 41, we're told, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu dhkuru Allaha dhikran kathira. O you who have believed, remember God with unceasing remembrance, constantly, unceasingly. The Arabic original has the emphasis is very clear, and it is a command, like pray. It says Udhkurullah. Remember God constantly, unceasingly. Don't stop. And you say, how can I not stop? I need to do this and that. The whole thing is to learn how to find out that actually everything, all our activities in the world, what goes outside and what goes inside, is actually reminding us of God. So when I start deciphering the ayat, and when I find out how everything is reminding me of God, then I won't ask the question, how come, how can I, what if I forget, or I don't have time, I have other things to do. We won't ask these questions, because these questions become meaningless. This is a question from a perspective that doesn't understand what the world is about and what it means to remember God. What is important here is to remember all the time, in anything to do with Iman, connecting to God, finding out who we truly are, is that the lack of it is not neutral. It means dhikr is very important, not only because only through remembering God, through dhikr Allah, we find rest and we fulfill our purpose in life. But when there is no dhikr, it's not like we imagine that life is neutral. Okay, I am not interested in the beautiful results, the fruits of dhikr, so I'm not going to make dhikr and I am okay. No, it says, when you are not making dhikr, you are going to be miserable. So there's no neutral situation. It's totally negative. So in Surah Taha, which is Surah 20, Ayah 124, we're told, as for him who turns away from remembering me, God is speaking, the one who turns away from remembering God, his life shall be of a narrow scope. It means ma'ishatan dhanka, like very tight, very restrictive, very unfulfilling, nothing will ever satisfy him. And of course, from the ruh perspective, it's very narrow because it is limited to the physical. And even the physical doesn't fulfill its purpose because the material thing becomes purposeful when we know the purpose of its creation, its meaning. But here there is no meaning. So it says, his life shall be of a narrow scope, and on the day of the resurrection, we shall raise him up blind. Because that person is actually blind to the reality here. And that's why he will be raised blind in the hereafter. And in Surah 43, Ayah 36, we are told, as for anyone, it says, anyone who chooses to remain blind to the remembrance of the most merciful, anyone who chooses to not remember the most merciful, we assign to him a shaitan, a Satan, to become his close friends, like his other self. So when we are not engaged in remembering God, the most merciful, we are not in a neutral space, because the creation is not neutral. The creation is glorifying God. The creation is witnessing to the beautiful names of God, is making tasbihat, is reminding us of him all the time. And so when I am not seeing them as they are, it means I am distorting the reality. So that's not neutral. And that's why he says, then Satan will become like the other self of that person. Because that's what Satan is, to keep you away from the reality, to put a cover of false assumptions on what you think the world is, and what you think the meaning of life is, and when you think who you think you are. So if it is not the reality, it means you made it up. And that's what Satan is about, to take you astray from the right path, the path of reality, the path of truth. And the path of truth is the path where you realize that everything is glorifying God. And so it becomes easy to remember him. Actually, not only remembering him won't be only saying God, but our eating will be an act of remembering, an act of worshipping, an act of knowing him with his beautiful names, an act of, it becomes a worship, it becomes dhikr. And you can use that with any other actions. Even as we are told in the Quran, even as they're asleep, that also a means of ibadah. But of course, the person who is aware, when you go to sleep and you wake up, when you are going to sleep, when you wake up, the whole process of sleep is a miracle of divine mercy, of divine wisdom, and it is all reminding us of God and glorifying him with his beautiful names. So we need to go to know God as our Rabb. Remember, this is the topic of this surah from the beginning. It was, God is your Rabb who did this. As we've been told since the beginning of this surah. And it started with khalq, with telling us what the creation is. And then we were told all this creation is being sustained. Yudabbir al-amr. It is also, he's the one who sustained it with his tadbir, through his command. And so we get to know our Rabb, God is our Rabb, as we get to know ourselves as more than physical beings. And that's, you can see the wisdom right after ayah 7, Ayah 6, until Ayah 6, it was talking about the creation in the world. And then 7, 8, 9 was 7, 8, you're created from clay, and then you're given form, and then the ruh is breathed into you. So this is important. This parallel is important. We were told about the creation, the process of creation, khalq, and then how creation is the result of the divine command, be and it is, amr. Then the creation of human being, which was described as created from clay, from matter. Then form is already immaterial. Then ruh is breathed into him. And that's how human being sees, hears, feels, understands. He becomes a conscious being. So I had mentioned how human being is the bridge where khalq, where the process of creation and the divine command unite more openly, more explicitly within us, because the ruh proceeds from the divine command itself. And so it is like a unit of measurement of how creation is the result of divine command, because we have that divine command within us, and that's how we get to do things. So our limited creativity becomes like a unit of measurements. And that's how, without whether we realize it or not, that's how we say we can infer that there is a creator. We can infer that creation is the result of a command, of a law, of a divine law. So in order to know, though, our Rabb better, we need to be aware of this, because in the beginning we do it without being aware. We infer without being aware, but we need to become more aware, and so we can start identifying with the ruh. We start living from the ruh. Then we start witnessing how the process of coming into being in the world, the act of creation, is actually the result of the divine command, is actually the result of be and it is. So then we will be able to make the shahada. So when we are told innama amruhu, whenever he wants something, he just say be and it is. How can I witness and confirm the reality of this ayah, of this statement of truth? I have to see it in the world. And in order to see it in the world, I have to cultivate my awareness. So I am living from the ruh, and so I am closer to the meaning of the divine command, because that's the core of our ruh, is the divine command. Otherwise, when we identify with our physical being and we live from there, then we experience the world accordingly. We experience the world without realizing, because that's the main characteristic of living from the physical, from our physical being, is that we are not aware of who we truly are. And so we start perceiving the world as matter. Matter becomes important. We become more, even if we don't identify ourselves, we don't call ourselves materialists. That's how we perceive the world. Matter is important. Matter matters, if we want to put it. So it's important to realize that we are conscious being, because like it's said in the Islamic tradition, the human being is the microcosm, and the whole universe is the macrocosm. So there is a saying, or the understanding is, if human being, of course, this is the conscious human being who fulfilled his humanity, who fulfills his purpose of creation. Otherwise, when we are living at a level less than fully human, then it doesn't apply to us at that level. But so I'm talking about a conscious human being. If he were, so the idea is, if he were to grow, he will become the universe. And if the universe, or the earth at least, were to get smaller and smaller at the human size, it will become a human being. Meaning that they project each other. They both of them are the result of a divine command of be and it is. And to the conscious human being, he can see that reality in the world because he's aware of it inside. And the one who is unaware of it inside of him will project his ignorance and his misperception onto the world and see the world as primarily matter.
Dr. Yamina, I just want to highlight here how dignifying this is to human being, that we are so tiny, so small, so minuscule as a human race, but also as individuals even more.
And you can understand why nothing else can satisfy the human heart, because otherwise, can you imagine, we limit ourselves to our physical being, but deep down everyone has this longing of spacelessness, of timelessness, of eternity. And we become stuck into, that's why it says ma'ishatan dhanka, very, very narrow livelihood. Subhanallah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, we're so, as you said, we're so tiny, and yet we are a small universe. I mean, microcosmos. We are.
We are not a small. In a sense, the more conscious we are, we are a huge universe. That's why there is that saying that I don't know if it's truly a Qudsi hadith, or I haven't checked the line, but at least in meaning, it is accepted in the Islamic tradition, which is God saying, I could not fit.
Heavens and the earth could not contain me, but
but the human heart contained me.
Yeah.
So it's actually huge because of that consciousness, not because of the physically we are tiny, but consciousness-wise we are, spirit-wise, each human being is just huge.
And that's why it's important to peel back the more peripheral or marginal aspects of who we are to get to the core, because sometimes you can get caught up in a feeling, in a thought, in a trauma, or in a petty dispute. So on those moments we don't feel that.
But in those moments, it's true that we don't feel because we numbed the other side.
And I'm saying that's why we need to kind of work.
Yeah. Because even when we are numbed, even when we are unaware, there is still like a big black hole into us that nothing can fill, and we can't really explain it, but we feel that nothing can fill this black hole. And that black hole, there's only one way to fill it. When we wake up from that the nightmare of our delusion and wake up to the beautiful reality of who we truly are. We take like the meaning of conscious being, we think conscious like a cat is conscious. Yeah, but human being is more than that. That's why in the Quran it says they are like cattle. Nay, they are even worse, because like cattle, that's how they are created. But you are created to be much more than this, and you want to limit yourself to this. And there is a part of us that will never accept the limitedness and feel the misery. That's why that pain is what will potentially, if we are willing to listen to it and to surrender, is telling us that you are not going to in the right path. So that's very important. Remember, ayah 7, we were told who. So our God is our Rabb, who makes most excellent everything that He creates. So let's see what's excellent about our creation. He says, He begins the creation of human being out of clay. Then He causes him to be begotten out of a humble fluid. So far, clay, humble fluid, they're all things that have no value in our perception. But then in ayah 9, we are told, so those two were matter, and then how He made most excellent everything that He creates. From this seemingly lowly matter, He forms him in accordance with what he is meant to be, and breathes into him of His Spirit, and He endows you with hearing and sight and feelings as well as minds. Yet how seldom you are grateful. The most excellent creation is that He takes clay and a humble fluid and breathes into His Spirit, and it becomes this conscious being who hears and sees and has feelings and minds. So we need to keep asking ourselves. We may say, okay, I'm not my physical body because I hear, I see. But like, who is it that sees when you see? What is that I see? I there, who is it? Is the body, the eye? They are flesh. How can flesh sees and hear and understand? Hearing, seeing, understanding, feelings, emotions, or making sense of something you saw, and it brings about feeling into. These have nothing to do with matter. So the more we contemplate, the more we ask questions, the more, inshallah, we're made to realize that there is something else that sees. Whether you call it here, it is the ruh, the spirit, the ruh, that conscious part of us that hears, sees, feels. And when the ruh feels the body, there is no life, there's no hearing, no seeing, nothing. The body becomes a corpse. It is dead flesh, and it is buried in the earth. And I've seen, this is not only, we're not talking here about people who don't believe in God. People who do not deny the existence of God can be, how do you say, can be stuck with the body when they come closer to death. What will happen to my body? But it will be in the earth. Will it hurt? Will it be painful? If I'm asking this question, it means in life, I didn't know that it was not the body who was feeling and hearing and seeing. So it's like having a vehicle in this world. it's our vehicle. It's like a car, and it has a driver. When we see a car, we don't care. I mean, if you are concerned about the driver, whether the car is big or small, or you like it or you don't like it, is not your priority. Is not the most important thing. If you have something to do with the driver, and here the driver, in a sense, is that who we are.
Yes, if somebody says, we changed the car, it's not a big deal, even if it's a lesser car, we're like, okay, fine, but if somebody says we changed the driver, your beloved friend was coming, but we took away that, but it's a much nicer car now that's coming to you.
It makes no sense. These people are crazy.
Yeah, I always the driver, not the, yeah.
And you don't care whether your friend came driving this car or that car anyways. What you care about is that your friend is there. So when we contemplate and we remember who we are, then we also need to contemplate on the creation of the heavens and the earth and beings around us in the world, like we were told at the beginning of this ayah. It usually starts with the outer world. So we start with the outer world, we understand there is something, we come back to ourselves. Now, when we go back to our contemplation of the creation out there, the quality of the perception of the contemplation is going to be very different. It's going to be better and better. The more we remember who we are, the more clearly we start seeing what beings are as ayat, as glorifying God, as in a way they are our siblings, and we start glorifying God together, and we will be able to witness how they indicate the divine command, how they mirror and reflect the beautiful names of God. When in ghafla, the opposite happens. When people don't pause and don't reflect on who they are truly, they don't reflect on the messages of ayah 7, 8, and 9 of Surah al-Sajdah, for instance. They end up assuming or living as though they were their bodies, they were their physical entities. And as a result, the body and the physical aspect of life start assuming a very prominent position in their life. I mean, we can see, just take a look around, and we can see how we are quite stuck, because there is an inclination in our society to be caught or to be stuck into giving importance to the physical aspects of life. And the resulting worldview tends to be more and more materialistic. Matter seems to be at the core of existence. And God is relegated to, he created at the beginning, he creates maybe from time to time, when there is some kind of what seems to us like a miraculous intervention. But on the whole, right now, everything in nature seems to be following some laws. And in our personal life, it doesn't seem to be so much laws, but more like random. And it makes sense, because in that sense, it makes sense for people in that state of mind, because in that state, people can't even appreciate the purpose, the meaning of their own creation. What makes the creation of human being excellent, so beautiful, as we are told in ayah 7, is that this clay and this humble fluid are given form, and then ruh is breathed into them, and they start seeing and being conscious and feeling and everything. So what gives human being its special status, his being so valuable, so meaningful, is not the clay and the humble fluid. The clay and the humble fluid is we share it with all other living beings. But what makes human being different is the rest. And when we don't live from there, maybe a little bit from the emotions, but even there they are like confused, and we don't know their meanings, and it's just like they seem to be like we're suffering them, or they just happen to us. And from time to time, we enjoy something, there is joy and happiness, and then suddenly it disappears. It's like in the Quran, the people walking in darkness, and from time to time there is a lightening. So it seems like there is a little bit of light, but it doesn't last long. That's how life becomes, because it's darkness. There is no true purpose, no true meaning, even in their own creation, because they don't see the ruh. When we start living from the ruh, we realize that everything is so beautiful and so meaningful, and there is wisdom in every single thing. So for someone who is living at that level, how can they recognize purpose and wisdom and meaning in the world when they can't see it in their inner self? So unconsciously, what we do, we project our inner self-perception onto the world. So unless we rectify our self-perception, we're not going to see the world as it is. And that's what's described in Ayah 10, when we are told, and they say, what, after we've been lost in the earth? They think they will be lost in the earth. What is lost in the earth is only our body, but our body is already lost. Like every 6 months, physically, our body is lost. And even if we don't know that part of science, we were babies and that body is lost, but we still, it's not the end of us. But that's how they identify themselves. After we've been lost in the earth, shall we indeed be in a new creation? Nay, they are disbelievers in the meeting with the sustainer. Of course, if they are disbelievers in the meeting with the sustainer, means they don't know their sustainers. And we have to meet our sustainers here in order to know that we are meeting him in the hereafter as well. And this ayah reminds me of ayah 5 of Surah Al-Ra'd, which, as I said, we studied together. In ayah 5, so in Surah Al-Ra'd, from ayah 2 to 4, God describes his creation, how he creates. And then in ayah 5, we are told, and if you are surprised, yes?
Surah 13?
13, Ra'd, yeah.
Okay. And verse 23?
No, 5.
Wow, okay, thank you.
In 2 to 4, it talks about the creation in the world. And then in 5, we are told, and if you are surprised, then what is more surprising is they're saying, what? How can it be that when we are dust, we will be in a new creation? These are the ones who deny their sustainer. So in Surah al-Sajdah, we are told they deny the meeting with their sustainer. Here we are told they deny their sustainer. It means they do not acknowledge their sustainer. They don't see, they don't perceive the creation as an act of rububiyyah, and so they cannot acknowledge it. And so they don't believe in their Rabb, because they are not living from the ruh, so they can acknowledge the rububiyyah within themselves. Remember, to acknowledge the rububiyyah within ourselves is to be aware that we are totally dependent on someone else. We are totally dependent. And so we start becoming aware that we are being sustained right now. My breathing is being sustained for me right now. I am made to breathe. I am made to speak. I'm made to understand. I am made to see. How do I know this? Because I know I have no control over my breathing. I cannot create the air. I cannot make it go into my lungs. I have no control. Yet, lo and behold, it is done unto me so easily, so beautifully. Alhamdulillah, whoever is doing that, that is my Rabb. And so, but if there is no contemplating, no reflecting, then say God, and okay, why are you talking so much? Why, as if. So why do we have so many thousands of ayah in the Quran, so many of them talking about the creation? People say, okay, I know, I'm talking about in the Muslim, I know God, okay, tell me what to do, and okay, I'll do that, and now we have our life to live, as if it's two different things, as if it's like I do my ibadah, my worship, and afterwards it's my time. There is no such compartments in life. Everything, when I am walking, when I am enjoying a beautiful view, when I am eating, when I'm walking, sleeping, everything is an opportunity to remember God. And it's not like, oh my God, when I'm not living from the ruh, it seems like this is too much. But this is not too much. It's not work. It is a consciousness. It is a knowing. It's only when I live at that level. And I remember I shared with you this example. Someone with a good intention asked, but like, isn't that like too much? How can I remember all the time I'm abd, like to be aware of my ubudiyya all the time? Of course, we say it's not only because you remember you are in ubudiyya, everything around you reminds you of that. And it is a state of consciousness. So after some explanations, the person actually found, answered her question. And she said, oh, like the person was an MD. She said, it's like when I get into the hospital, I don't have to keep saying to myself, I'm a doctor. Like, don't forget, like, or if you are a teacher, you don't keep reminding yourself, I am a teacher. I shouldn't just leave the classroom. I shouldn't just do this or that. I'm a teacher. Please, let's remember that I am a teacher. No, you know that you are a teacher. When it's time to go to class, you go. It's not a burden, as long as you made peace with it, because especially if you like what you are doing, it's a knowing, it's who you accept it to be, and that's it. Once you know it, that's it. So it's not like a burden. It only seems like that when we're not there.
Yamina,
Yes.
do you know when it would be a burden? It would be a burden if I am trying to convince everyone else that I'm the teacher, or trying to convince someone that I'm the doctor. I'm not the doctor, so I don't want to forget that I am playing the role. I'm cheating. I'm like, want to fool everyone. Then it's a burden, because like you keep reminding yourself, oh, I cannot say that because as a doctor or as a teacher, like, so then that's when it becomes a burden.
I am taking it like they will.
Yes.
What if I take my stethoscope or something? They will think I'm not a doctor or something like that.
yeah. So it's like the same thing. Like it becomes a burden when I'm trying to live this life in another way. Then it's a burden. Like, so it becomes natural when you accept what's the natural, that natural gift, but otherwise it becomes a burden,
our
just like
reality,
yeah,
that it is done unto us,
yeah,
and then we will
yeah,
see the rububiyyah everywhere, and then we will know that we will meet
yeah,
our,
yeah.
and
Jazakallah
the,
khair.
everything being an ayah is reminding us all the time and reminding us who our sustainer is in new ways from different perspectives with different names, different in different ways. And so we realize that we are guests of this generous, this magnificent Rabb. And actually in Ayah 2 of Surah Al-Ra'd, before Ayah 5, we are told, God is he who has raised the heavens without any support that you can see. And then he is established on the throne. Remember that yastawi ala al-arsh. And he has made the sun and the moon subservient to his laws, each running its course for a term set. He regulates all that exists. You know what it means. يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. This is in Surah Al-Ra'd, but the same expressions are used. These are expressions that are recurrent in the Quran, and you start when you see those expressions, they are an ayah telling you, oh, this is what was said that. So if something is not clear in this passage, you read it in connection with the other passages, and they shed light on each other. So he is يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ, he regulates all that exists. He makes the ayat clear so that you may be certain of meeting your Rabb. This is very important. It means that one of the purposes of creation, the night and day and all these things, the establishing of the throne and the tadbir with his amr, and making, and therefore with all this, making the ayat clear for us, all this is for us to be certain of meeting our Rabb. So if we don't have this certainty that we are meeting our Rabb, then it means if in our perception we don't have this certainty, it means in our perception, the creation, the tadbir, the amr, the ayat are all in vain. They are not fulfilling their purpose in my perception. It's like they don't exist. I'm not aware of them. Can you imagine how unidimensional life I would be living when we are created to live this multi-dimensional, endless life, like the ruh, the physical life, the matter cannot contain it. It's too limiting. It needs to have access to these, the world of the creating, the tadbir, the ayat, their meanings, the beautiful names that they indicate. That's what gives life, and it's like air and food to the human heart and the human soul. And that's what gives us true fulfillment and true peace and satisfaction. So you can see how important it is that the creation to be certain of meeting our Rabb. And of course, so from one perspective, it's like, oh, everything will be like in vain. And from our perspective, like, how is being certain of meeting our Rabb important? How does it affect the quality of our life here and now? We talked about it, and Isra has mentioned a little bit, but again, just, so the ego doesn't have any excuse. As we always say, when we are certain of that we are in a state of returning to our Rabb. When we are witnessing the Rububiyyah in everything, it means we realize that we are guests here. We are guests and we are travelers on a journey, but this journey is meaningful. We're moving towards a destination, and we're not just living haphazardly. And it's not like whatever befalls us just happening randomly. No, whatever happens in our life, it is happening on purpose in order to guide us, to prepare us, to make us grow, to help us on our journey to that eternal destination. We also realize that we are being taken care of and that our host is munificent, he's generous, he's merciful, he's powerful, and he has everything under his control. This is very important because so often we want to control things. We have this need that things are under control, but we can't. We try to, but most of the time we can't. But when we know for certain that everything is under control and the control of someone who has all comprehensive power and mercy and wisdom, and he knows knowledge, then it's a big relief. So we look forward to meeting him now. And that transforms our way of being in the world, here and now. We are now grateful. We are at peace. We trust because we have a source of support, of help to rely on. And also in the negative, like if the worst thing happens, in the worst of situations, we don't lose our hope. We don't feel helpless because first we know that everything is fani, it is transient, and also because even if I don't understand the wisdom, the meaning of what's going on, I trust, I surrender, because most of what I've witnessed so far is very, very meaningful and very miraculous. And so even when I cannot do anything about the situation, I know that it is still under control, and the control of Rabbul Alameen, the one who creates those things. Like they cannot be out of his control. He is their sustainer. Not only he created them and now they do whatever they want. No, he is. Any one oppressor can just fall down dead right now. So, and we know that is happening for a reason, with wisdom, with purpose. The person can be an oppressor, but what I do in that situation looks to me, not to that person, to me and to my creator. And so being certain of meeting our Rabb makes us more aware that we are accountable. It's easier to live more responsibly. We become more sensitive to the consequences of dhulm and transgressing the rights of others, for instance. And doing good also is the direct consequence of knowing for sure, being certain that we are meeting him now, and we will meet him more clearly in the hereafter. So when we believe in a generous and giving Rabb, for instance, then we are not scared of scarcity. It's easier to trust that there is abundance, and sharing with others and giving to the needy becomes easier, even when we don't have plenty, because the matter, the quantity is not is not our point of reference. And also because when the matter, when the quantity is the point of reference, people starts, they can't share. They say it's not enough. And some just don't share, but some go and steal from others. Oppression, exploitations of the weak, instead of protecting them, is all because of that greed and that belief in scarcity. And that's why in all this, we need to be steadfast in patience and prayer, because it's not always easy, because most people are not certain of meeting their Rabb, so they can turn quite nasty, and what they do is can be very ugly. And we have to be aware of that. And we will try to do our best, but sometimes there isn't much we can do except for praying. But we have to be careful not to fall into the other side just because of that. And we will not, inshallah, if we keep steadfast in patience. And patience here is not only tolerating what's going on, but being aware that it is the result of the creation of our Rabb. And remember, in Surah Al-Baqarah, we are told, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبَّهُمْ وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ راجعون. And seek help in steadfast patience and prayer. And this is difficult, this is indeed very difficult, except for the humble in spirit, those who are khashi'in, and those who are aware that they shall meet their Rabb. So being patient and steadfast in prayer is very difficult, we are told, except for those who have khushu'. Who are the people who have khushu'? Those who are aware that they are mulaqu rabbihim. It's the same expression that we have in Surah Al-Sajdah. And that they are وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And in ayah 32:10, we are told they are disbelievers in the meeting of their sustainer. And in ayah 11, we are told the angel of death who has been in charge of you will take you, and onto your Rabb you will be returned. So there is the return as well, which is important. So, and just in case, just like in every time, there is no neutrality. Just in case we didn't get the importance of being certain of meeting our Rabb, we saw how important it is. In ayah 5 of Surah Al-Ra'd, it tells us, the rest of the ayah explains to us how miserable the situation of those who do not believe in their Rabb and believe in their meeting with their Rabb. It says they will be miserable, which means, again, no neutral situation. Either meaningful eternal life or meaningless life that ends with death. So as a result, there is always that big black hole, I don't know how to, that emptiness, that unfulfillment, that dissatisfaction. And makes sense because we're looking to fill those longing for eternity in the wrong place. We're looking to fulfill them, to fulfill that need, that longing, with transient things that are just being created and sustained just as we are, which just doesn't make sense. In Surah Al-Isra, which is Surah 17, in ayah 49 to 52, we are told, and they say, after we will have become bones and dust, shall we be raised from the dead in a new creation? Say, whether you be stones or iron, or any other substance which to your minds appear more difficult, like hard, like iron is strong and hard. And thereupon they ask, who is it that will bring us back? Say, he who has brought you into being in the first instance. Thereupon they shake their heads at you and ask, When shall this be? Say, it may well be soon. Can you see how the questions are coming from a state of ghafla? And it describes very well our state of ghafla when it seems like death will come to anyone, can come to anyone but me. I know mentally, intellectually, as information, I know that I can die in even in few minutes. But emotionally, that's not how it feels at all. And this is because we are not present to the reality of transience. And in order to be present to that reality, we need to contemplate, we need to stop, to pause. Stopping, pausing, slowing down means remembering. And we need to stop and remember and look and acknowledge the transience. What we do usually is we do just the other way around. We try to avoid that reality as if it doesn't exist because it reminds us of death. But that's okay when people don't know what to do with it, because it reminds us of death and then we panic and we have nowhere to hold on. But now we know. We are told, look, things are leaving, there's transience, but they are being replaced. Something else is coming after. Yesterday is gone, but you are again standing today. So where are they coming from? Where is this flow of life, of being, of existence flowing from? Who is sustaining us in existence? Then we get to know our Rabb. So even if it is uncomfortable, and it is very uncomfortable in the beginning, we need to be patient and stay with the reality of transience, because it is the gate onto the eternal. It is the gate onto the permanent. We need to stay with it. And then we start, instead of focusing on, oh, everything is leaving and dying and panicking, I will focus on things are flowing in, they are being created. There is an act of creation, an act of sustaining, an act of creating beautifully in an excellent, with ihsan, as we are told in ayah 10. In ayah 7. In a beautiful way. Breathing is being breathed into me. Life is being breathed into me, and therefore into everything else around me. Then slowly, when we are patient, instead of being focused on what's leaving and not making sense of it and panicking, we start being focused on what is being received and being at awe at the miracle of receiving all that creativity. And we cannot not be grateful. We cannot not prostrate in awe, metaphorically and physically. And so the heart will start processing that reality that not only it may be well soon, when we leave the world, definitely, we will meet but we are meeting him through his creation and through our, the ruh that comes from him directly, right in here and now. And we start enjoying that time of contemplation, and that time of, the more we contemplate, the more the rest of our day becomes meaningful. We start living at a higher level of ihsan, inshallah. And in the same surah, Surah Al-Isra, in ayah 98 and 99, we're told, such will be their requital for having rejected our ayat and having said, after we will have become bones and dust, shall we be raised from the dead in a new creation? And then, and they who are not aware, are they then, are they then not aware that God, who has created the heavens and the earth, has the power to create them anew in their own likeness, having beyond any doubt set a term for their resurrection? However, the wrongdoers refuse to accept anything but disbelief. It means they are not open to seeing the reality. They already think they know, but when what they know has no rub in it, and they stick to it. So the point is to be able to consciously perceive how mulk, malikul mulk, mulk is the creation, indicates the malakut, indicates the angelic aspect of things. That aspect, everything, there is just like there is a ruh within the body, there is a conscious part, an angelic part in everything. And how khalq, how the process of creation proceeds from a divine command, from amr, from be and it, from be, because khalq is it is, and the other is just be, and then it is. And this is so important. Be and it is a formula that you can contemplate, but maybe after you contemplate on the transience and who we are, remembering who we are. Because can you imagine, be is a word and it is being. It is matter, the world, the creation is a result of a word. When we live in ghafla, it seems just the other way around. Astaghfirullah. That's what materialism is. It seems like be is a word, so it's not very important. It is the reality. Subhanallah. That's why this reflection is very important. And the more we reflect, we also understand how our body is governed through the ruh, through that proceeds from the divine command. And this is possible when we live more consciously, of course. And as we are reflecting like this, it will cultivate our mindfulness. We will be more conscious, more mindful. And to uncover, the more conscious we are, the more it will become easy to uncover the veil of ghafla from over our consciousness. So we need to contemplate on our own creation as well as on the creation around us, because the ayat, as we are told in the Quran, are fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim, in the horizons, in the world outside, and within themselves, within yourselves. And I want to end with some quotes about matter, because we take it so much for granted that matter is more solid and therefore more real, but in reality it's the other way around. Less solid is more, has more impact, is closer to a source of creating. If you're living in a house now, that house was a blueprint, and that blueprint was in someone's mind before it was put on paper. And what was in that person's mind was an idea. Someone maybe dreamed of a house like this, then told the architect, and the architect put it into a blueprint, calculated and said this is. So you see, it seems like the house is the real thing, but the house is one house. The blueprint, you can make other houses like it with it. And of course, this is we don't have the power of be and it is, so we need workers and this. But you can see that it has, how do you say? It goes from the blueprint to the house and not vice versa, unless someone is an architect, comes and measures the house and recreate the blueprint. And that's how we look at the process of creation, and we go back and we say, oh, this is the result of a command, of a law of be and it is. So talking about matter, Imam Badi' al-Zaman Sa'id Nursi rahimahullah, he says, matter is not the kernel, it is not the fundament. And this is how he starts his treatise on the ruh and the angel. He wants to explain to us what ruh is and the angels is. And he starts by telling us what matter is first, because unless we understand that, we're not going to get an idea of what ruh and angels are. So he says matter is not the kernel, it is not the fundament, it is not a settled abode so that the events and perfections may be affixed to it or constructed on it. Rather, it is a shell prepared to be split, rent, dissolved. It is a husk, it is froth, it is a form. You can think of paper and writing on it. So paper is matter, and the ink is matter, and shapes is a little bit form, so it's in between. Now, if that is a message, the message is the paper and the ink and the shapes are the means to serve that message, the meaning of that message. When I read the message, when I understand the meaning, it says, be careful, do this and that. Once I get it, I can throw the paper. It's not important anymore because I got the meaning. It served its purpose. Its purpose was the message it was conveying. So that's one example. He carries on and says, matter is not essential so that existence may be made subject to it and be dependent on it. Rather, matter subsists through a meaning, and that meaning is life, it is ruh, it is spirit. Also, as may be established through observation, matter is not the thing served so that everything may be ascribed to it. It is rather the servant. It renders service to the process of the perfection of a truth. And that truth is life, and the fundament of that truth is ruh, spirit. Also, as is self-evident, matter is not dominant so that recourse may be made to it or perfection sought from it. Rather, it is dominated. It looks to the decree of some fundament. It is in motion in the way that that decree dictates, and that fundament is life, it is ruh, it is consciousness. Because we see for the human body, it is ruh and consciousness. The ruh is conscious. For other creatures, a tree growing, you can cut the branches and trim it and things. And next year, in spring, it will grow again. That tree, that wood is there to serve a truth, and that is expressed through the tree. And the tree, the way it is growing meaningfully, it doesn't have a ruh, but it is clear that it is the result of conscious creation. So it manifests consciousness, and that's why it looks to Malakut, to the angels who represent that conscious creativity. And even in modern science is largely based on materialistic cosmology, which means matter is considered, they insist that it is the fundamental substance because they see no meaning in anything. There is no meaning, no truth, no, as if human being is a machine. There was holistic medicine in the East and in the Muslim world. And then in the 17th, I think, century, all the books of Ibn Sina and Muslim doctors were burned, and a new era of understanding, was it maybe 17th or 18th? Anyways, I forgot all those things, alhamdulillah. The more they started making the industrial revolution started, the more they started thinking of the human body as a machine. And there was even one famous book in Europe, it was, I think, in French, L'Homme Machine, human being is a machine. And this is, to this day, Western medicine is mostly like that. That's why you have someone specializing in ear, throat, the other one specializing in the brain, one specializing in the heart, but they're all actually related. And the specialties are not related to each other. None of the specialty talks about how the diet of people, not only their food diet, but their mental and emotional diets, as if what they eat, how they live, the stress and everything, they're all new things now, but they were all well known centuries ago. Medicine was holistic. Now it is slowly coming back, but still not so much in the hospital, because this is matter is the fundamental substance behind everything, and a human being is seen like a living machine. And so what it means is matter is perceived as possessing independent, objective existence. And so if you have an illness, it is because it is totally material. But now people know that you can have a tumor, but actually the tumor, you can, your halat ruhiyya, how do you say, your state of being can have an effect, positive or negative effect on that tumor, for instance. Can make it worse or can make it better. But which means that it is the ruh that has ascendancy on the body. But in this materialistic approach, it's the other way around. Matter has objective existence, and everything somehow, all phenomena are somehow reducible to material interactions. Even emotions are chemical interactions and things like that. That's what they want to do. However, in quantum physics, the more you look into matter, the more you find that it's actually all the results of motion. So what we think of as solid matter, like objective reality, it's not like that at all. And so even our concept of matter changes in the very, very tiny microscopic world of particles. And I want to share with you some, like two physicists said. One of them, Max Planck, both of them are very well known in quantum. They're the founders of quantum mechanics. So Planck, he says, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, because science became more and more materialistic, physics became more and more the queen science. Why? Because directly it deals with matter. Can you imagine? So he's saying, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. Because what we call matter, deep down, when you go in, is just a vibration, just motion. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force, which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. And he adds, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulate consciousness. So they go, because they got down, they understood that, oh, that matter that was so solid, that looks objective, is just vibration. And so who is vibrating different things at different vibrations? It's just motion, but a motion that is well regulated. Tadbir, amr, more transparent there. Clearly, it is consciousness. So he's saying in science, the assumption is that matter is the most fundamental substance, and everything else they try to reduce it to material interactions. In physics, which is the study of matter, they realize that what we call matter, there's no such matter as such. It's actually behind it there is a consciousness, and consciousness is what we cannot reduce to anything else. And Schrödinger, who is also a Nobel quantum physicist, he says consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms. Consciousness is absolutely fundamental. So they realize that it's not matter that's fundamental, it's consciousness. And matter is the result of consciousness. Consciousness has power over, and we have the parallel in our life all the time. It's just that we don't live consciously enough. That's why you will find among Muslim thinkers, and maybe in other old religions as well, things that are very close to this, not because they were in a lab making particles travel very fast and calculating them and all that, but because it is the reality that matter is not the fundament. So he says, consciousness is absolutely fundamental. It cannot be accounted for in terms of anything else. Now, look at a non-physicist, Ustad Bedier Zaman Said Nursi, rahimahullah. He says the transformation of particles. He has a treatise on the eye, the meaning of the eye, and how we get to know the beautiful names of God through the eye. So the first part is about the eye, and the second part is about particles. Why? Because first the eye and then the world. Particles, that's what it seems to us, that everything is made of atoms. It is made of atoms. But what are these atoms? It's like the story of Juha, when what was the story about the halwa, Isra?
They asked him why he's not making
Halwa.
halwa, this dessert, and he said, "I don't. Is this the one? I don't.
Yeah, sweet. And they
I don't have all the ingredients. When I have flour, I don't have. When I have sugar, I don't have the butter, or something like this."
and then when all the ingredients were there,
And then he said, "I'm not here."
no, he said, they said, okay, here is the flour and the sugar and the oil. Where is the halwa? Where is the sweet? So clearly I forgot the how the story was told, but the thing was that the sweet was not only the ingredient, it needed someone to make them. And because he was unwilling to make them, he was making excuse about the ingredients. But in science and in people who live in ghafla, in how we perceive the world, it seems to us that the ingredients equal the thing, which is not true. We can't reduce a car to its component. And if you want to try, just take all the components down and then give it to someone who doesn't understand anything. It won't become a car. And even you can say those components, yeah, but they are made in a particular way. It's not just any steel, any iron. Someone had to work to make it into a car. But we tend to reduce things to their material components, which is often just a trace of what's going on really. But what is more important is that consciousness, or like creation, is the result of amr. And to a certain extent, it happens like that in our life as well. And that's how we understand that reality. And the more conscious we are, the more we will be able to see that for instance, you have the same ingredients. With the same ingredients, you can make 10 different pastries. Each pastry is different because you wanted them to be different. So matter is at the service of your will. So here, Imam Said Nursi, he says, the transformation of particles are the vibrations and wanderings that occur while the signs, the ayat of creations, are being written in the book of the universe by the pen of power of the eternal inscriber, meaning God. The transformations of particles are not games of chance and jumbled, meaningless motions like the materialists fancy. For like all beings, every particle says, in the name of God, Bismillah, at the start of its motion, and it raises loads infinitely exceeding its strength. It is used it's like someone says, the sugar and the ingredients of the different pastries, they are making the pastry. Clearly there is someone who knows the result is using them in different ways. So the way they are acting, it is like as though they are saying in the name of God at the start of its motion, and it raises loads infinitely exceeding its strength. For example, a seed the size of a grain of wheat shoulders a load the size of a huge pine tree. And on completion of its duty, it says, Alhamdulillah, all praise be to God. For by exhibiting an art that is beautiful and full of purpose, and a decoration that is fine and full of benefits, which astounds all minds, it displays a work of art like an ode of praise of the glorious maker. That's how it is glorifying its maker. and I took only this much. Just wanted to share how different people looking at the creation from different perspectives, but since the reality is one, they all converge. And what is important here at this stage is that matter is not what it seems to us. It only seems to us like that. It's because we are unaware of the transience, because we are living at a lower level of consciousness. Inshallah, let's stop here, and inshallah we'll meet after on the 8th of next year, January, with the rest of Surah al-Sajdah, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين الحمد لله.
Jazakumullah khair. Yes, please go ahead, Talia.
First of all, jazakumullah kull khair. MashaAllah, I just love this session today, and I've not been here for 2 sessions, so I was missing it. And I have a question, and that is, like, at the beginning, you were saying like how Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had, was the one that was able to fulfill our human potential by realizing and connecting with all the beautiful attributes of God. So does that mean that and then, like, as we're looking into our journey in life, we realize that this journey is meant for us. It's like it's our Creator's way of teaching us how to reach to these names. So does that mean like that we have a potential to get there, and maybe, like, depending on how much we are willing to invest in this potential, we will we'll get to taste some of the names fully, or some of the names partially, of all of the names partially. So it depends on how much are we putting into the journey, but we do have that potential. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. إن خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل السافلين. أحسن التقويم, that's أحسن التقويم, inshallah.
So أحسن التقويم is when we are able to realize and taste and...
Yeah, we are created with that potential. Inshallah, we'll do our best to fulfill it as much as possible.
Okay, and also I needed to meet with you and Isra after we're done. I just wanted to discuss something about the retreat. So, okay, jazakallah khair. I'll hang on.
Inshallah. Is there anyone else who wants to ask a question or share a comment?
Yeah, I have a question about the sort of being conscious of our thoughts and conscious of creation in terms of sort of the discursive thoughts that one is aware of day by day or hour by hour, and then how that relates to the act of deciding, making a decision about thoughts. It seems like the act of deciding is sort of a negation of being conscious of creation, conscious of one's thoughts. It's like a very egotistic type of thing where you're trying to decide about something. So that's sort of my question.
I'm sorry, Isra, did you get what the question? Can you repeat it from your perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is that you were talking about being aware
Yes.
of, sort of being conscious of your thoughts, and conscious of the creation around you, conscious of the beauty of creation and so on. And within that sort of conscious being conscious of your thoughts, there's sort of discursive thinking. And part of discursive thinking is sometimes people have to make a decision about something in their lives. And that seems to me sort of a negative. It's not really part of what you were describing tonight.
Oh, okay.
So I guess my question is more about...
Do you have an example in mind, for instance?
Well, just in general, just the act of having to make a decision is kind of more of something that comes from the kind of the small I, kind of like a it's not the greater sort of being. And I just wonder how one deals with decisions, because it seems like it's kind of a self-motivated action.
I think if I understand you correctly, you're asking how we navigate the balance between connecting with the core, which is the ruh, and living in day-to-day life where we need to make decisions, conscious decisions. And so how do we go back to a level of core of consciousness where many of these things look petty, right? Whether my body is healthy or not, or whether I achieve this particular goal, or whether I move to this house or not. Like all of these decisions petty, and yet we also need to be conscious to make conscious choices. So how do we navigate the two? Is that...
That's how I understood it too.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It almost seems like we should be kind of conscious of our thinking, conscious of creation around us, conscious of everything. And but at the same time, when one is faced with a particular decision to make, it's like it's almost that's where it's not just being aware of something. It's sort of like a self-motivated kind of almost slightly, it's not natural in a way. It's sort of thinking about thinking. It's discursive thinking.
Okay, so one is when I said conscious, it becomes our new way of being. That's why I gave the example of the teacher or doctor. So it's not like, oh, I'm conscious, which means that when whatever level we are at being in touch with our core, our other selves, if we may say, are present there together. The difference is the more we live from the core, the more connected we are, the more it will translate into wisdom in our practical decision making. That wisdom will be given to us. We're told in the Quran that it means like we will have more access to it. Sometimes we make a decision, and then after a while we realize that maybe it was not the best decision. I could have done this, I could have said this, I could have. That gap will be closed. The more we are in touch with the core, the more we won't realize it 10 days later, 10 hours later, but on the spot, we are more grounded, more open to that wisdom, and therefore we make our decisions more knowingly, more mindfully. So that time there won't be something is more a petty work and something is more glorious. It all depends on what we do with it. And there was a thing about self-interest, or like more in my self-interest.
Yeah, with the decision, sometimes it's kind of it can be sort of.
That's an interesting question, because
Can I give you an example, Yamina?
yeah, let me finish this sentence and then yes, please. So it seems, usually it seems like life is about, especially when we are making decisions, it's about either self-interest, it's about either me or the other, it's about losing or winning. But wisdom is to, when we start seeing beyond those options, it's not always two options. There is often, there is a third option where there is a win-win, when there is something that will benefit me and at the same time benefit the others. That vision will open up when we are more connected to the core. And so we get to make a new choice that was not present in our consciousness before, because we were limited with, I have to take what's best for me, but often it seems like what's best for me may not be the best for the other.
Yeah.
That wisdom of let's call it third alternative, like another alternative, another way of looking at things, where maybe we can make decisions that are neither only for the other, nor only for me. It could be a win-win for everyone. Alia,
yes. Sorry, and you're saying that would happen when you're more grounded in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
More, and one, I can't think of an example, but just I know that in the beginning, when you become more grounded, you start realizing that, oh, there was actually a better choice. I could have said this in a better way. But in the beginning, you always realize it after it's done. And that's a good sign, because now you are becoming, there is like an opening onto another reality that was there all, but I was not aware of it. And
right.
That access, in the beginning, it's like after a month, I realize it because of some consequences. And then it becomes more and more, the gap starts narrowing, until I find myself, while it's happening, I'm making the decision. And that's why they say, like Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, he says, when you are going to start take an action, make your intention, intending means going back to the core as much as I'm aware of my core. It means becoming more, making a choice knowingly, consciously. And that's why we are told, say Bismillah, but Bismillah doesn't mean much if it doesn't remind me of something profound.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that's. Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome. Alia, you said you had an example that may help.
Yeah. So you gave one example, which is when it's me and the other. But then, like, this weekend I lived with a friend of mine, an example where it's within herself. So she's diagnosed with a lump that is pre-carcinogenic, and it was taken out, and it should be taken out. But then after that, so there's two things that she needs to do: to take a decision to take it out, and then after taking it out, to take a decision to be put on hormonal medicine that could have side effects. And right now she is in a situation where she's realizing that that decision is a decision that that is very difficult for her to take. She did not realize before how difficult it would be. So in her situation, the decision has two things. One is that she will, like, you know, it's about like, I'm always going to live with a possibility of having the cancer come. It means that this medication will cause side effects, that I have a possibility of all these side effects of happening to me. So the decision is either to, like, you know, for her, it's a lose-lose situation. Like, you know, there's no winning in it. But to change it into a win-win situation.
For her, it's like
Yeah.
one is bad and one is worse, maybe.
Yes. So then, so the question is for you, how can we change her perspective? How would being mindful change that perspective from bad and worse into something else?
Now, if I can remind the time.
For instance, maybe Alia is thinking there is alternative healing, and we know of people who take other, someone could explore that, for instance, but some people are not even open to that venue, and often it's because of our state of being. If we are too panicky, too much in fear, then we can't even grasp what the possibilities are. We need to calm down, be in that state of connectedness with our Rabb, and know that, okay, there is this possibility, and I am made to dislike it for a reason, not to be paralyzed with fear, but that fear and that dislike is for me to look for something, to look for the names of God into my life, like Shafi and Mu'afi, the healer. And so I want to seek the healer. Is there another way of seeking the healer? And that itself is going to bring peace, and the possibility of finding something else will at least exist. But when we are in panic and in fear, we don't hear anything. So maybe, Alia, is that?
Yes, yes. So,
and a door open, a new possibility
so then,
that is not there before.
Yes. So then the healing then takes a different meaning. It's not just the healing of the body. Like, it's not just like the guarantee that my body will be free of. And she says, I know that I could die anyway. I know.
Even person who has no lump, nothing, no tumor, nothing, tomorrow, there's no guarantee for tomorrow. Not only for a healthy body, I may not even be in this world. So when we make peace with this reality, we can deal with the illness more effectively, more calmly, and there are so many accounts how, like especially in alternative medicine, the state of mind of the person counts as well, not only what they take. And we can see that in our life.
جزاك الله كل خير.
Okay, so inshallah we will stop here at this time, and we will resume, as Yamina said, January 8th, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Those of you whom we will meet in retreat, we'll look forward to it. For those of us we're missing, inshallah, may you be in peace and in a state of connection to your Ruh and to your Rabb. All of us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair, Yamina. And Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for joining tonight.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.